So on a topic that I know is near and dear to you, on safety, we've talked about it a lot. We're still experiencing a crisis, and way too many people are dying on our roadways. Again, last year about 43,000 people, and I know it's an urgent priority for you. It is for us as well as at AASHTO, and we really want to look at that 2024 is the year that we can harness all of the data and best practices that we've embarked upon to significantly move the needle on safety. And from our standpoint, moving that needle means fewer people dying on our roadways as we move towards zero deaths. We've got our countermeasures that work, that I think you have been imploring us to look at. We're doing all those things. We're trying to address it through technology, through every lane that we can, working with enforcement, with our first responder community, with our engineering, safe systems approach, that if someone doesn't make a mistake, it doesn't have to cost them their life. So really, just building on looking at on that and on safety, just wondering if you could speak to how AASHTO's approach dovetails with USDOT's and FHWA's priorities and actions to meaningfully bend the curve on roadway fatalities towards zero for all users.
Yeah, so first I just want to thank AASHTO for the opportunity to be up here. It's a privilege to get to speak to this group in a setting like this. I would also just take a moment before I jump right into safety. Can I get all the FHWA staff in the room to stand up, please? I know you don't want to, but you're going to have to. As we've been rolling out the bipartisan infrastructure law over the last couple of years, the staff at Federal Highways, who I have the great privilege to be the captain of this team, are just, they're working late, they're working long hours, and their heart is really in it. And I just really want to always take every chance I can to thank them, because it's an amazing team. It's my second time being around with them. Gloria Shepard is our great executive director, and our former administrator, Victor Mendez, is here as well, and I see Greg Nadeau is out there as well. So when I was working with Victor and Greg, we were at 30,000 deaths on American roadways back in 2010, and we were cautiously optimistic that we were, actually going to get to zero. I actually remember having Victor actually having a big fight over, let's get to zero, and they want to say, let's go towards zero. But it all turned out to be moot because we went the other way. And, we're up around the 43,000 mark. And normally I'm a bit gloomy when I talk about this, because even one death on American roadways is too much. But I actually want to have more of a positive take today. I think the AASHTO Safety Summit that was organized last year, and I want to thank Secretary Millar and Patrick, if Patrick is here. I know that's been a focus area for Patrick for a while as well. But I actually feel like, God, we always get together and talk about this, but I felt like there was actually action behind it. A bunch of CEOs showed up, and then our division staff worked with all of the state DOTs around the proven safety countermeasures, the 28 of them that our safety team is always talking about. And I think 48 of 50 states have actually worked with their divisions to say, here's what we're going to do. And I know I sometimes get cloned as part of the MASTO mafia now that I live in Michigan. But I do want to, call out a couple of states, and Michigan in particular has been really forward-looking. And I think US 131, they're going to deploy some proven safety countermeasures. Tennessee, I would just go through, I could go through all the states, but it is just such a positive thing for us to follow words with action. And I'm just really grateful for all the state partners. I think every single person in this room has either lost somebody or knows somebody that has lost somebody to a traffic fatality. And I am cautiously optimistic. The last couple of quarters, the numbers are coming down a bit. Nothing for us to celebrate, but we have, I think, stopped that sort of post-COVID massive 10% year over year increases. I think we got to be a lot better on vulnerable road users. If you look at the data, and I always like to make data-driven decisions, that's where we're seeing massive increases for pedestrians, for cyclists, and so whether it's separated bike lanes, sidewalks, complete streets, there's a lot of things that can be done. I would say when in doubt, roundabout. So that is, I know a lot of states are moving forward in that space. So take a look at those countermeasures, meet with your DOTs. But I said this to the group in Kansas City, I think we were. State DOT secretaries, and I just met a chief engineer from Massachusetts. Hopefully she's still here. If not, no discretionary money. Okay, you're still here. I'd hate for something bad to happen to a discretionary grant because you snuck out of this. But if you are a state DOT secretary or you're a chief engineer or somebody who's just, anybody, right, within the DOT, that is a powerful voice for safety. And when you go back and you say, this is something that I care about and I want to make happen, and the feds are there and there's money available, we can really move the needle. And, I was thinking about President Kennedy when he said we're going to put a person on the moon by the end of this decade, and he went down to Cape Canaveral or somewhere, and he was like, what do you do here? And they're like, I'm in telemetry, or I'm in rocket science. And he met a janitor, and he said, what do you do here? And he said, I'm helping to put a human on the moon by the end of this decade. So you don't need a title to be a leader, but those of you that do have titles that are in this room, you have the ability to actually help get us there. And Secretary Buttigieg is behind it. We've got funding, so I am eternally hopeful that this is the time. And then the last piece, we have the Saving Lives with Connectivity discretionary grant that's out there. There's all kinds of safety money that's in the bipartisan infrastructure law. Representative Larson talked about it today, that technology is changing the way that we construct projects, that we experience transportation, and I've been a big evangelist for this, particularly since Colorado DOT. I fully believe that if we're going to get to zero deaths on our roadways, technology is going to have to play a key role. And this is an exciting time for us to really take those tools and say we're helping to get to zero deaths on American roadways.
So if I could just maybe follow up on a couple of the things you just said. You talked about the fact that under President Millar's leadership, we had our safety summit last year. As a result of that, we had our safety resolution that came out of that, again with Patrick McKenna leading that, and then our safety action plan. And I think, for a minute there, our safety action plan was actually up on the screen. So, we want to be focusing, working through that. But in addition, I know it's been a priority for you, and you just touched on it in the end when you talk about technology. It's not a silver bullet, and there's all these different areas. But when it comes to technology, I just wonder, a little bit more. One of the things that's so appealing to me in this space, whether it's, I've talked with Ed Sniffen about what Hawaii is doing on some of the predictive analytics as it gets to vulnerable road users. I've watched what Russell's done in Georgia with some of the Vita X things. It's one of the components, but what's so attractive to me about it is, while it costs money, it's something that I can just unilaterally do.
Yeah.
I don't have to go get approval. I don't have to get a law changed. I don't have to convince a lot of policymakers of something that they might think might be infringing upon, we can deploy that. So you talked a little bit about technology, but just any more thoughts you have on what it can do in the space of safety?
Yeah, I mean, when I was working with Mark Williams in Kentucky, we had a fatality on I-65. The police report would say, the crash occurred at mile point 42, right? And so that crash could have occurred anywhere 1 mile north or south of that mile marker. Now we're getting, GPS data, lat-long data, telemetry data off the vehicles. I mean, you can really delve into a lot of these crashes. And the other thing that's important to look at are the near misses. Why didn't a crash occur? And so all of us are awash in a sea of data. What we need is actionable information and intelligence from it. But I see Brian Cronin is here, Martin Knopp, Cheryl Walker has left us, but Robert Ritter is here as our new as a new leader for safety. So talk to us. But I just feel like there is. And just think about this, right? And Victor always used to talk about this, but there is no aspect of your life that has not been changed by technology, right? The way that you shop, the way that you consume media. In 2010, Victor and I would fly in and, we'd be like, let's rent a car and rent a hotel, right? And now when my wife and I have that discussion, it's let's Airbnb and get an Uber. And so those are two verbs that were not nouns in 2010. So I just think that, whether it's vehicle technology, smart intersections, all of the predictive analytics that are out there, I mean, you can completely operate your system just night and day different than we were doing it 10 years ago. And I'm excited for the states, whether it's the Utahs, the Georgias, all the states that are really pushing forward in this space. I just think it's such an exciting time, and also it's really incumbent upon us, if we want to get to zero, to deploy every tool in the toolbox. And we always say every day counts, and every day on American roadways, you divide 43,000 by 365, it's about 117 lives. Today, 117 people will lose their lives on a system that we are all responsible for. So, let's, last thing I'll say is just, when it comes to technology, we need to be careful and we need to be safe, but when it comes to safety, we need to err on the side of safety, not on the side of caution.
By the way, I give Phil attribution, but I repeat that phrase that you use all the time in that area, because I think that is so important. I do just want to close off that part by saying that we will be following up, having another safety summit this year to make sure that we continue on the work that was begun.
I know you want to close off on this. Senator Carper, the least scripted member of Congress. I'm probably the least scripted member of, as a federal official. And, our public affairs people always just like, oh, Lord, take the wheel, right? I'll just say on this, this morning we heard, and I have really tried in coming in to try to depoliticize a lot of the stuff we talk about, right? Not get too involved in things. One of the things I'm most proud of is the unanimous consent vote that I got to get out of the U.S. Senate, because that's a rare thing when it should not be these days, but we become intensely politicized. This morning we heard a lot of discussion about our climate change rule, and I would just say to this group, and I know that AASHTO is not taking a position, some states are all in, some states are suing us. I would just say when it comes to safety in America, we talk about 43,000 lives being lost. There are lives being lost in red states, blue states, purple states to climate issues right now. And, the Federal Highway Administration has released, I think, $2 billion in ER funding to all states. And so whether you're one of us suing us or one of the ones supporting us, I would just say when it comes to climate change, I put that under that umbrella of safety for the 21st century, and hopefully we can try to work together to find a way that we're able to see a path forward on it, but hopefully it can become depoliticized like some of the other things that we've been able to depoliticize.
So I guess just transitioning in that a little bit, in just a little bit, I think we may talk a little bit more about reauthorization and how that pertains to the IIJ going on right now and some of the processes we're going through and learning from. And you've heard a lot about discretionary versus formula and all those things. But I do want to talk a little bit about bridges and both on the formula and the discretionary side, and some of the incredible successes that have resulted as a result of the IIJA. So I would say in Wisconsin, outside of the discretionary program, we get our allocation 5 years for that special bridge program is about $225 million, or about $45 million a year. We've looked at our system and where we believe the greatest need is, and 100% of that money is going to our local units of government to fix and repair their bridges. And it's incredibly impactful, the amount of bridges that we're going to be able to not have load posted and make sure they're safe moving forward. But then there's also bridges that are just of massive, sometimes bordering states of national significance. And we have one of those that crosses between Wisconsin and Minnesota, between Superior and Duluth, right up at the top of Wisconsin area, and it's called the Blotnick Bridge. It was built in 1961 The Twin Ports is right there that it facilitates, which is the largest port on the Great Lakes. It's the #1 freight destination both in Minnesota and in Wisconsin, and that is one of the main marine links to Canada, which is not only Wisconsin's largest trading partner and Minnesota's largest trading partner, it's the United States' largest trading partner. And with all that being said, it was built in 1961, there's corrosion, and it's already been weight restricted. It can't be rehabilitated further with some of the critical truss issues and things that we can't get at. And so if we weren't able to figure out a way to fund this, and the price tag's at about $1.8 billion right now, in 2030 we were literally going to have to shut it down. And I mean, you think about that in the United States of America right now, I mean, it would either have been that, or I can't speak for Commissioner Daubenberger, Nancy, I don't know where you are, but on the Minnesota side, but it would either have been that or decimate and cannibalize the rest of on the Wisconsin side, the rest of our system. So we were incredibly fortunate to be able to receive an infra grant through the discretionary process of $1 billion that was just announced recently for that project. Wisconsin has set aside and dedicated our $400 million to get us the rest of the way Minnesota has. So we have the money there, and we're going to replace that bridge. And that's among the other, more, I guess, mundane bridges is, I think, some of the success stories that have been going on about this. So I just thought I would throw that out to you and talk a little bit about how you're foreseeing bridges across the country, and it fits into IHA, whether it's formula or discretionary side as well.
So when you say the more mundane bridges, would that be the Cape Cod bridges? Would that be Brent Spence? I'm just trying to understand how you're, because at Federal Highways we love...
Maybe like in Lafayette County, Wisconsin.
Oh, okay, because at Federal Highways we love all our children equally. And I bet you want to talk about bridges. President Biden showing up with $1 billion. Just a quick story. I did tell him I would share this. So
can we turn his mic off? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no. This is good stuff. So I get a call from the White House saying, President's going to go up to Wisconsin, announce funding for the Blotnick Bridge. Who can give the president like a thumbnail? Because Secretary Buttigieg and I were having the employee award, so we weren't able to travel. And I was like, well, it's got to be Craig Thompson, president of AASHTO. I mean, Nancy would be great too, but president of AASHTO, dollars in action. So I text him and I'm like, hey, are you available? And he's like, oh yeah, absolutely, that'd be great. I was like, well, send me your email and I'll connect you with the people in the White House. So he sends me his email, craig.thompson@wisconsin.dot.gov. So I shoot it over and I got like 50 other things going. White House person comes back, that email bounced back. And I'm like, did I make a mistake? Like, what did I do? Like, what kind of a moron can't send an email, right? So I texted him back and I was like, is this the right email? And he's like, sorry, so sorry. It's actually Craig.initial.Thompson at, and then he sends back at wisconsin.dot-gov. And I'm like, brosif. Do you actually mean hyphen? Because I'm not going back to the White House with another wrong email. At that point, we'll need a new federal highway administrator and somebody else to discuss the bridge. But after that somewhat shaky start, he did a great job. And those of you who work for Secretaries of Transportation, there is a inverse relationship between how high you are in the organization and your ability to actually send your email correctly. And I say that for anybody who's worked with me before in the past. So yes, when we were in Kentucky, and I'm looking at Mark. Now Mark did come over with a mea culpa earlier. He said what did you say? You complained that one of our grant agreements had not been signed, and we can identify that it has been signed? Look at that. Wow. That's a Texas-sized shout out right there for the Federal Highway Administration, and everything else is... Yeah. And everything else is flowing smoothly between Texas and federal highways now. It's fantastic. So no issues whatsoever. But when Mark and I were working together in Kentucky, we had to do the Louisville bridges. Brent Spence was like this distant speck, that we're never going to get the funding for that. And that was the first place the president went. in partnership with Ohio. I'll also say this. I was in Rhode Island yesterday because one of these bridges from the 1960s has been shut down, and the community in Rhode Island is struggling. And there's a lot of anger. And I would just say to all the secretaries of transportation or CEOs who are out here, when you have a bridge issue in your state, it is all hands on deck and time to go, because the public may not know that the bridge was built in the 1910s, like the Columbia River crossing or the I-5 bridge between Oregon and Washington, but they sure as heck know when it closes. So even like posting a bridge or saying that part of our interstate system is not going to be able to carry freight, that is unacceptable in the 21st century in America. I'm glad that we have a bipartisan infrastructure law. I'm sure the president will talk in the State of the Union about the 10,000 or so bridges that have been repaired because of the bipartisan infrastructure law. But there'll be lots more discretionary grant funding, but I'm grateful to the states who have been able to put their formula dollars to work.
So just in my defense briefly, autocorrect is a horrible thing. It does not like Craig M. Thompson, it just likes Craig Thompson. So, and on the hyphen thing, I don't know. By the way, though, his actual response back to me in the text back, if I remember right, was, perhaps I picked the wrong person for this assignment.
That's my BlackBerry, when I was an Obama appointee, used to correct Shailen Bhatt to Chilean bass. I was like, that dog just won't hunt,
So moving on, if we can talk a little bit about some of our favorite subject, August redistribution. As you know, it's on people's minds. It's one of the things that I know Jung had, and I don't know if we have that up there either, but there's a fix that I'll talk about in a minute that I think that it may not be perfect from everybody's standpoint, but it seems to be there's some synergy around. But first, I'd like to start off by saying while it's the size and growth of it's become a challenge, and to get 15% out in the last portion is a challenge, I think, for everybody, especially who want to plan for it. I do want to start out by thanking you that while we may not have solved all of that part, getting an estimate this much earlier in the process, I know for me in Wisconsin, like we are trying to reach out to our locals right now with bleeping lights and saying, here's how much contract authority we have in each of these buckets. If it's not if there's one you think you can get there and it's not in your tip yet, get it in now, because we might still have time because of that earlier. If you can get to PS&E by August and you can come up with 20% match, like, let's go. And our TAP program and all those. So it is exceedingly helpful finding out earlier, but it's still going to be a Herculean challenge for Wisconsin. It's about $200 million, which is a big number for us to try to do that. So I know we've talked about the 4-year oblim. That Jung talked about, but if you could just talk a little bit about some of the things you think that we could be doing and the flexibility of both right now and then trying to address some of the root causes of the growing redistribution.
Well, the fact that Representative Larson actually made a decent joke about August redistribution just shows how mainstream we are now. And you should check with Russell. He's got a good one too, but I don't think I can repeat that one up here.
I was thinking about it.
It's good. I mean, it's not. Nobody's getting fired over it. I might, but he's not. I want to thank Brian Bazzaio and the whole finance and acquisitions team and all of our division offices who work really closely with all of you. This whole thing is literally one of the stupidest things that we've created ourselves. When I was in Delaware, it was like there might be a few $1 million available, and we had one project on the shelf that was ready to move forward. Having hundreds of millions of dollars or $1 billion for a couple of states getting run out the door, and you remember that game show that you had to go shopping and you had 3 minutes to buy as much as you could? That's what I think of every time I'm like, how can we obligate $7.9 billion last year? And I think we cleared it by $54,000 or $84,000. I mean, it's just dumb. And it serves no purpose. Maybe it serves a purpose. I don't know what the purpose is. And so hopefully we can get a legislative fix. And I know AASHTO is really taking the lead on that. Secretary Buttigieg has talked about this being very important. Deputy Secretary Trottenberg met with AASHTO and heard that as well. It's like everything in DC right now. It's just a simple matter of talking to legislators and getting a quick fix. No controversy, no problems, just smooth sailing. But I will say though that reaching out to your locals now is great. Them understanding that it is a 20% match. There is still a perception out there that you're winning the lottery. It is not winning the lottery, and Jim often talks about this, that what we're trying to do collectively is tell a good story on how we deliver the program. And I would just say to everybody in this room, we heard a lot about reauthorization and the next child of the bipartisan infrastructure law. If we lapse OBLIM this year, that won't be a good story, and nobody is going to care that it was a state issue or a federal issue. It'll just sound like we got the largest bill in history and something bad happened, and we just have to be careful about giving them more money next time. So I think there's a collective awareness of let's get this fixed, and I just appreciate AASHTO's partnership and our support in trying to get that done.
So sticking with a little bit on some of the IIJA things that we're working through, and there's such a large amount of discretionary funds that your administration is in charge of getting out. When we talk about project delivery, it's another thing we've talked about, speed of it. I was talked about this morning, Secretary Perdue and Secretary Williams a bit, and I do want to say that, and I want to thank Gloria, because I think this has been an area that there has been a lot of resources, and we can definitely tell there's intention at trying to work through this process so that we don't have project agreements that take as long as that. So can you talk a little bit about some of the efforts that FHWA is working with AASHTO and the states on about trying to increase the flexibility and speed up some of the project delivery timelines?
Yeah, so I think President Biden wants to talk about projects that have been built because of the bipartisan infrastructure law. I don't talk to him that much, but I'm going with a good one, a good guess on that piece. Secretary Buttigieg, who I talk to pretty regularly, has made it very clear that this is the year of project delivery. And he, I think, understands the ability and reputation of federal highways of helping to deliver projects. And hopefully others are getting the message that is what we want to get done. One of the things that we did and the Secretary signed off on for us was accelerating projects, because states who for decades have been partnering with division offices to get projects out, understand all the federal rules, deliver projects pretty seamlessly. We had a pilot. Well, they wanted to call it a pilot. I just consider it to be the new way we do business. And they were like, we want to try it on 4 projects. And I was like, we want to try it on all projects. And that resulted in a negotiation. We got to 42. And so there are 42, and I think the project in Texas, no, it's good, we're good, is one of the ones, so that, our division offices worked with the states to say, let's get this done. Because if safety is our number one priority, the American economy is our priority, the faster we get these projects, delivered, the quicker we get a safer condition out there, the quicker we get the economic benefits. So I think over 50% of the 42 are done. Now, whether the state is ready to obligate, we're not going to come tell you when you need to obligate. It would be good to get it obligated, but you guys are working with different pots of money. But we want to make sure that everything is done on our part. And I was just in Vancouver, Washington, and Portland, Oregon, that Paula knows. I mean, this project has been going on. It's been through a few iterations. This is several $1 billion, a critical artery between Canada, Mexico, freight artery, and we're a little bit lost on the process. And I was, and people don't love this line. Some people don't love this line. I'm like, I've never been to the ribbon cutting for a grant agreement, but I've been to the ribbon cutting for projects. And so whatever we need to do on the grant agreements, let's follow the law, let's get it done, but let's go as Gloria likes to say, get stuff done. She says it a little bit differently, but I'm a little more PG-13. And so I would just say to anybody here, if there is something that is hung up where you need us to do something, like, let us know, right? Like, let us know, reach out to your divisions. We have bi-weekly meetings on Brent Spence. I don't know if we're having it today at 4 o'clock, but that's a critical project that we're moving forward. Not every project is quite at that level, but we want to drive on NEPA. Senator Capito talked about one federal decision. We don't own that, but we work with all of the resource agencies. Our goal, our success mark, is when projects move forward. Our success is not things are hung up, and I see Emily Biondi is here, who succeeded Gloria in that role, and they work very closely in tandem. So if you've got an issue, we've got a solution.
So one last part in this space, and then I'm going to move on to workforce for the final one. But and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. But we are, as you know, we're kicking off our reauthorization process at this. We kicked it off yesterday. We're going through. We've already got some 4 overarching goals, but our committees are going to be working through ground up on all kinds of policy recommendations of what we're going to be proposing for the next reauthorization. But from your standpoint, is there anything you'd want to impart upon us that we should be thinking about or considering? And again, if you don't want to go there, that's fine.
I want to go there. I just don't know if I'm allowed to go there.
Yeah.
I will just come back and say I probably won't be the Federal Highway Administrator whenever the next authorization occurs in a few years. You never know, but probably not. But maybe, we don't know. But did I cover all the bases there?
We got a chance.
Saying there's a chance. But what I would say is that, and this is, I hate this about American politics. And actually, it was really nice this morning to hear some of the civility around, infrastructure. And even though there are some big policy disagreements, infrastructure is one of the few remaining things that does actually unite us as Americans. I am hopeful that we can, using that as a foundation, find more ways to unite as Americans, because this country is way more important than a lot of the crap that comes out sometimes on both sides. But I do think, though, that even people who voted against the bipartisan infrastructure law show up to the ribbon cuttings and the groundbreakings, right? And nothing succeeds like success. And so I think what is so important is that we deliver on what we have given to us now, so that we can make a very compelling story to continue to invest in America when it comes back up. But I do think Carlos Braceras, I don't know if he's here, but and if he's not getting the discretionary grant that we signed off on the other day. You have to be here in attendance to receive your award. But he put something up on LinkedIn, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but it just talked about making sure that we're not sort of on one side, we're not very tribal, that we're looking at solutions that work for everybody. And that's what I would love to see, the bipartisan infrastructure law become the foundation for what we build next, both in transportation and as a nation. BAT 2028. Born in Canada, so I can't be president.
Well, thanks for that. I didn't know. I just thought I would give you an open avenue there. So when I talked about the 3 priorities at the beginning, we've touched on 2 of them, and the third one's workforce. And you're very aware of all of we can go through all of the challenges that everybody's facing with the demographics and the aging and all the different things that both private sector and state DOTs are facing when it comes to workforce. But I guess I'm wondering, do you think, is there some things within the bipartisan infrastructure law that can help us with that, and also, again, if there's things moving into the next reauthorization that we could be doing to specifically try to address fulfilling our workforce needs?
Yeah, so I think the other thing that's always important whenever you're going to do a White House event is you have to figure out the jobs number, and then you have to scrub the jobs number and then make sure, because when the president says something, it has to be accurate. So we're going back and forth on the jobs number for Blotnick, and I think we settled on like 10,000 jobs. But there's induced and other jobs, but it's sort of a nice round figure. So it's 10,000 jobs for Blotnick. It'll be 10,000 jobs for the I-5 bridge. It'll be 10,000 or 20,000 jobs for one or both bridges in Cape Cod. It'll be 10,000 jobs in Kentucky and Ohio for Brent Spence. Those are just a few of the discretionary grant programs. And we have unemployment, I think, of like 3.9% in this country. There are not hundreds of thousands of Americans who are available to go to work on these projects. And so, I was in the private sector before I came here with AECOM, and every A&E firm is like, how do we attract more people, right? Every state DOT is like, how do we attract more people? Federal Highways is like, how do we attract more people? So everybody is in a war for talent. We've got to go find people who are working. One of the more uplifting things, not every day is an uplifting day, but some days are very uplifting. And I was out, I think it might have been in Washington at a community college, and it was a Department of Labor event with us, and there was this African-American kid that got up to speak, and he was like, and I don't know, he was like in his early 20s, but he was like, me and my friends, we never thought about transportation, but I got into this apprenticeship program that was being offered, and now I've got a job, and I've got benefits, and it pays really well, and now I'm talking to all of my people out there and saying, hey, you need to come down and get one of these apprenticeships. And so, I always think about the transformation that we're creating in our country, whether it's through the projects we're building or on the safety side, but we are also going to transform lives because we're going to develop people who don't have a path forward on jobs today, and we're going to give them a career, and they're going to work in transportation, and they're never going to know that it was our work that created that career, but there's a whole generation or two of Americans who will work on these projects. And then the other piece of that too, and I talk a lot about this on the technology side, we had the Advanced Digital Construction Management Services, and Representative Larson talked about that. I was at CES this year, and they had a lot of automation in construction equipment. There's automation that's entering. AI and other things are going to impact the way that all of the way that we work and live, and it's up to us as leaders in the industry to understand how do we harness it, how do we leverage it, and how do we use it to address this backlog of we got a lot of work and not enough hands to get it done. So I'm very optimistic, but I just think it's an amazing outcome of the bipartisan infrastructure law.
Well, thank you. I think this has been a great conversation. At the very beginning when I was saying that I didn't think I really needed to introduce you, I meant that literally, because I feel like when I look out across this room, I think everybody knows you because you've just been so incredibly accessible to all of us. So we really appreciate what you've done to strengthen the relationship. Thank you. Thank Gloria and everybody at FHWA for what I think is a very strong relationship. Anytime we have something new like this, we've got a lot to work through, but I think there is the feeling that FHWA is doing everything they can to work through it with us under your leadership. So thank you very much.
Thank you.